And welcome back to another edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I'm your host, Sean Meyers, coming solo this week. Unfortunately, Justin Lowry unable to join us, but we will get Justin's predictions for Extreme Rules a little bit later in the show, the upcoming WWE pay-per-view that takes place this Sunday. But a lot of stuff to get to before we discuss Extreme Rules, give our predictions and breakdown. We'll also touch base on the All Elite Wrestling event this weekend, Fight for the Fallen. But I want to jump into weekly programming for WWE. And I think there's been a lot of excitement the last couple of weeks, starting with the announcement that Paul Heyman would be taking over Monday Night Raw, Eric Bischoff taking over SmackDown Live, how that would influence the week-to-week programming. I think we saw a lot of good signs a week ago on Raw, some clearly different aspects to the show, a little bit more edgy content. The fact that they got away from a long promo or, just time-filling segment to kick off the show. They jumped right into action. Well, that stayed the same this past Monday, but the rest of Raw kind of felt like it was the Raw that we've been seeing the last 6 months to a year. So I think there was a step back there. And rumor is that Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff will really start to have their fingerprints on the show starting this upcoming week after Extreme Rules. So it'll be a better gauge for maybe how much of an impact they can have. But I thought for SmackDown, even if Eric Bischoff was not involved whatsoever, it was a really impressive show and something to me that jumped out that I think we could be talking about maybe months and years to come, looking back on when things really started getting going for Kevin Owens, the face Kevin Owens. Now, Justin and I talked a little bit about him turning from heel to face last week without much of an explanation. Whatever, it happened, it's in the past, he's now a face, and he is not only a face, he is reminiscent, as you can see from the picture, Stone Cold Steve Austin from the 90s. He actually started the show off going off on Shane McMahon because it was Owens and Ziggler who got into like a confrontation in the parking lot. Shane McMahon came in, intervened. Owens went off on Shane. Okay, so the show kicks off with Kevin Owens coming out in the arena, basically hijacking a microphone, flipping out about Shane McMahon, and basically saying what the fans have been saying online for the past couple of months. Why is Shane McMahon in every feud? Why is he wrestling on a regular basis? Why is he taking time away from deserving superstars? Kevin Owens brought all that to light. It was nothing earth-shattering in terms of what he was saying because we've all been saying it, but to actually hear a superstar parrot those sentiments was pretty significant, and I think Kevin Owens definitely gave the feel of a guy who can excel in this role as sort of the CM Punk or Steve Austin type of face, if you will. And I say that CM Punk really was like a heel for the most part when he did his pipe bomb and all that, but it was what the fans wanted to hear. They wanted to rally behind a person who could sort of lead this change into what the fans want to see the show be. And it seems like Kevin Owens is the right guy to do that. Then he came out in the main event. It was Ziggler against Roman, but because Shane and McIntyre and Elias have this thing against Roman and it's building up to a match on Sunday, they try to interfere. Well, all of a sudden, Kevin Owens comes out, gives the stunner to Shane McMahon. Great reaction by Charles Robinson in the background, as you can see as well. It ultimately leads to Roman Reigns getting the win over Dolph Ziggler, which really, that was insignificant. The bigger takeaway, again, was Kevin Owens. And it just, I know I'm not the only person who felt this way. Justin sent me a text saying he loved the promo to kick off the show, reality-based promo. Kevin Owens, I really think he could be a guy that becomes not just one of the top faces in the company, but I could see him being the top face in this company. It all depends on if Vince McMahon is on board with that, but based on how it came off on Tuesday, the reaction he got when he did the run-in and attack Shane, it was a heck of a response and one of the better reactions I've heard a face get in a long, long time. To me, this has to be capitalized on, and I think it's going to lead to KO and Shane probably at SummerSlam. Whatever. Fans want to see Shane gone for good. If that is the end result of this feud, then it's probably worthwhile. And then Kevin Owens needs to win that feud, go on to bigger and better things. But if they stay the course and they really show some belief long-term in Kevin Owens as a face, this could be really a big-time turn and something that I honestly think we will look back upon and say, that's when it all came together for Kevin Owens. That's the genesis of this, much like you would say CM Punk dropping the pipe bomb on Raw, or Stone Cold Steve Austin giving his Austin 3:16 speech after winning King of the Ring. Maybe not to the same extent, but this past Tuesday on SmackDown, it did feel kind of like that moment for Kevin Owens as a face, because we've seen him almost exclusively as a heel in WWE and in NXT, so this is something different. I know Justin said they did want to bring him back as a face from his injury, kind of got derailed, but this seems like a good position for Kevin Owens. Speaking of someone that got a renewed push on SmackDown, Shinsuke Nakamura. Where has he been? Well, he returned, got a match against the Intercontinental Champion Finn Balor. They had sort of teased this, I think, 2 weeks ago as they kind of went face-to-face backstage. Nakamura is a guy that I think needs a reset. I have been critical of him because I don't think he's delivered in the ring on the main roster. He's been very underwhelming. He's gotten opportunities. He's wrestled some great opponents. Obviously, he had 5 matches against AJ Styles. Out of those 5, I would say 1 was very good. I would say maybe 1 or 2 were okay and 2 were flat out disappointing. He's had some good opportunities. That being said, it just seems like they need to find a way to motivate him, get him really at his best like he was when he started in NXT, because I think he still has some in the tank. Finn Balor might be that type of feud that maybe gets him back going. And the way that he was booked in particular, really just destroying Balor. Now, this was a non-title match. Nakamura made relatively easy work. Now, you could say the opposite of Finn Balor. Man, he's made to look pretty bad. He hasn't been used very well. He hasn't been a very credible champion since he won it. But I think this is more about building up Nakamura than reducing or minimizing the role of Finn Balor. Graves said something interesting. He said Nakamura was in a tag team. He's just better on his own. Now, that's not good news for Rusev, but that's another story, and we can get to that down the road. For Nakamura, this was much needed. Will it lead to a title match at Extreme Rules? I don't know. If it does, I'm not sure how you book it, because Nakamura becoming a champion, that's what he needs at this point. He would need a big pay-per-view victory to follow up this momentum. If he loses to Finn Balor, especially if it's a one-off, then it's like, what was the point of Tuesday night and making him look credible again? But I don't know if they want to take the title off of Finn Balor and really make him look like a joke of a champion. I would be okay if Nakamura and Finn did not square off at Extreme Rules. And I've seen some reports saying the match is going to happen, but I'm not certain. So we'll see. But it looks like positive news for Nakamura as well, getting a push. And we'll see if he responds. This might be realistically his last great chance to make a big impact. I believe he has re-signed, but he could go by the wayside if he doesn't deliver in this feud. They're certainly giving him a chance, maybe at a renewed push, based on how he was presented on Tuesday. So those are good things that happen on SmackDown, but something that I really was not that fond of, and just touch on this very quickly, the contract signing between Nikki Cross and Bayley, setting up for a 2-on-1 handicap match at Extreme Rules. It's going to be Alexa and Nikki Cross against Bayley. I think we all know for the last couple of months this has been more about Alexa and Nikki's dynamic than it has been them challenging Bayley. I've really enjoyed the interaction between Alexa and Nikki. That said, Alexa wasn't around this week. I thought it fell off considerably between Bayley and Nikki, both on Raw and especially on SmackDown. Bayley has new life, much like we said Nakamura's getting that second chance. Bayley got a second chance when she came to SmackDown, won Money in the Bank, cashed it in, won the title. But right now, I'm just not really feeling her as a champ. I mean, she's had some good matches in her run on SmackDown, but the promos aren't really working. I know she's sort of trying to do like a new attitude where she's more serious. That's probably the right idea, but it just doesn't come across that well. And ultimately, it's sort of weird because Bayley almost came across like a heel on Monday Night Raw, and then she still had some of that, I guess, heelish tendencies on SmackDown because she's going at Nikki, and we all kind of know that like Nikki's the innocent pawn in this, which makes her relatable as a face. So it's a weird dynamic. I think Alexa being back in it will make things a heck of a lot better, and I hope that that translates to a match on Sunday and then whatever they want to do beyond. But right now, Bayley and Nikki did not mesh this past week, so we'll see. I would anticipate that fans aren't super excited to see that match on Sunday as a result of how things unfolded this past week. I want to jump over to Monday Night Raw. I didn't think Raw was nearly as good as the prior week, nor did I think it was nearly as good as SmackDown was a night later. But there were some things I want to touch on. One is the main event. Now, again, Justin and I have talked at length about really the main event taking place at 10:45 or so. There's not a lot of eyes on that. It's not necessarily the biggest segment of the night. Typically, the 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock segments are. So it doesn't mean as much to say someone main evented Raw. But in this past week's instance, Cedric Alexander, I don't know that many people thought that he would ever be in a main event of Raw, let alone this soon. There was a catch, though. As you can see, Cedric wearing a janitor's outfit along with a mask. He was the mystery partner for Roman Reigns, the hand-selected partner by Shane McMahon. And basically the way this storyline unfolded, it could have been really cool, but they did it at the wrong time. So, quick background on this. Roman and The Undertaker, yes, I know, it doesn't make a lot of sense, seems very unnecessary, but Roman and The Undertaker face Shane and Drew McIntyre on Sunday at Extreme Rules. So, what would have made most sense is have that match take place, Undertaker, Roman win, Shane and McIntyre try to get some revenge the next night, say, hey, The Undertaker's not here, he's not allowed to be here. We're going to have Roman go against us again in a tag match, but this time we picked the partner. It's not The Undertaker, we will say who it is. Then you have this swerve where instead of it being a, hobbling janitor that Shane picked, it's Cedric Alexander, but Cedric gets the surprise victory over Shane McMahon. Didn't happen because they did this before the pay-per-view, so they can't have Roman and basically a jabroni partner beating Shane and Drew, because then why do we even need to see The Undertaker? We know, of course, Roman and The Undertaker would win. If Roman just won with Cedric Alexander, he's a shoo-in with The Undertaker as his partner against the same team. So I get why they had Cedric lose, Cedric and I guess to a lesser extent Roman, but this could have had a big impact. It could have been a career-defining moment for Cedric because the fans were behind him when he started to rally. Maybe not knowing who it was, I was able to tell pretty quickly from the moveset. Saw some people think maybe it was Apollo Crews or Leo Rush. If you've watched Cedric on 205 Live, you could tell pretty quickly it was him. But what does it do for him? This would have been great to have it the night after, have him win, and then maybe just use that as a way to kind of end the Shane and Drew versus Roman feud that I think people are ready to move on from. But instead they do it before Cedric loses, then he takes the mask off, he's smiling, and it's like, what was really the reason for it other than just to fill a segment? So that could have been really cool, turned out to be kind of underwhelming and probably in the end just pointless and insignificant. So that's one of the big matches for Extreme Rules we talked about, Undertaker and Roman against Shane and Drew. It's not the only kind of peculiar and unique tag team match, however. For both the Universal and the Raw Women's Championships, Becky and Seth, the real-life couple, will be joining forces against the far-from-real-life couple of Lacey Evans and Baron Corbin. And this is something that, they were just so excited, WWE Creative and Vince or whoever. Once they found out Seth and Becky were dating, they wanted to make sure that everyone knew. So they've been giving these hints, building up to this. Well, it leads to them just being honestly super awkward, seemingly having no chemistry on TV. I would have much preferred that they kind of kept this away from storylines, at least for quite some time. And maybe they could give like a very, very vague or very quick hint of it. Maybe they walk past one another and they kind of, give the eyes or something like that. But it's not working for me. It's making Becky less cool. It's making Seth so much less cool. Because Becky actually looks like a little bit stronger of the two in the relationship. And, I don't understand why they feel the need to bring this on TV. It just seems like that's WWE's MO. If there's something, it's in real life, we got to do it on TV. In this case, why? What benefit? I mean, Seth and Becky really didn't need to be paired together. It doesn't help one or the other. And as I said, I think it's hurting both. So they have this just a mind-boggling mixed tag elimination match, which makes no sense, against Andrade and Zelina. Becky defeated Zelina Vega, and then Seth defeated Andrade. The reason why they did it as an elimination was so that they could get the commercial break in, because that's how WWE has to operate now with matches spanning 2 segments. But logically, it made no sense. So Becky won the first fall. So basically, she and Zelina were out, even though Becky kind of hung on the ring apron. It didn't make any sense since it was a mixed tag. What if Andrade had won the second fall? It would just be a tie. So that just annoyed me and others to no end. Nonetheless, it was, okay, kind of disappointing. Ultimately, Becky and Seth, I hope that after Sunday, that's the end of them being paired together. It's not needed. It's not helping them. And like I said, I think it actually hurt both of them, at least this past week. Also, wanted to talk about something else I thought was kind of bizarre on Raw. A week ago, we saw the reunion or reformation of the club, Anderson and Gallows, along with AJ Styles. Well, they made them look really imposing and dominant in the main event. They all beat down Ricochet. So with Ricochet and AJ set to do battle on Sunday, and that should be a barn burner, if you will, they decide to have kind of a prelude with Ricochet going against Big Luke Gallows on Raw. So they have the match. Well, guess what? Ricochet wins. Now, he did win sort of, with like a quick, unexpected pinfall, and that's fine. But that sort of discredits Gallows pretty quickly. I mean, it was, maybe a 5 or 6 minute match, and Gallows did kind of control it, but Ricochet wins. All right, whatever. Well, they go to a commercial. They come back. Now it's Carl Anderson against Ricochet. Well, guess what? Ricochet defeats him as well. So Ricochet beats both of this supposedly dominant tag team, a tag team that they're trying to give a renewed push to, back to back, one after the other, and then AJ comes in and beats them up, and they finally triple team them, so on and so forth. How does that make Anderson and Gallows look like anything more than the jokes that they had been? So you want to give these guys a push, you want to make them seem important, pairing them with AJ Styles, turning them all heel, and then a week later you kind of throw that away by having Ricochet beat both of them. I guess you could look at it as a positive for Ricochet, but he's already a champion. They probably could have done this without making both Anderson and Gallows, that tag team, just look pathetic, which is how it kind of came across. So I think maybe stuff like this hopefully goes away when Paul Heyman has a lot more control. But it seems like a staple of Vince McMahon, and people talk about 50-50 booking, so on and so forth. I just want booking that makes people look credible for more than a week at a time. Because now, after this Sunday, we come back to Raw next week. Who's going to believe Anderson and Gallows? Maybe they challenge for the tag team titles. Why should we believe that they're going to be real contenders when we just saw them both lose to Ricochet back-to-back in the same night? So that's a little pet peeve of mine. It is what it is. We'll see how it goes forward. But ultimately, I thought Raw could have been a lot better. SmackDown overall, I give 2 thumbs up to. That leads us into Extreme Rules. And I said, unfortunately, Justin's not here. But he did offer his predictions for the show. So I kind of want to go through what I think. And then I'll give Justin's his pick at least. I don't know if I can give the explanation as to why he made the pick. We might have to wait next week to hear that. But let's start with the, I guess, main event, if you will. Seth and Becky against Corbin and Lacey. I actually don't think this will be the final match of the night. I think that'll probably be Roman and The Undertaker against Shane and Drew. But this one has 2 titles on the line, so technically, at least if you're looking at the Raw perspective, it is the biggest match. I just hate how this match has been set up, and the stipulation is winner take all. So if somehow Corbin and Lacey win, no matter who wins, they both become champions. So Corbin would take the Universal title, Lacey would take the Raw Women's title. I don't anticipate that. Becky and Seth both need to keep those titles. They certainly cannot afford to lose them to Baron Corbin and Lacey Evans. I think this is a slam dunk in favor of Rollins and Lynch, and I know Justin agrees with that. I'm not really looking forward to the match at all, to be honest, and it's a shame that Seth Rollins, for a couple months now, has been thrown into matches that people seemingly don't really have much anticipation of or really care to see, but that's what happens when you go against Baron Corbin and then you throw in this cheesy boyfriend-girlfriend storyline. So Seth and Becky pretty clearly win this one. Let's jump over to the SmackDown WWE title match. It is Kofi Kingston defending against Samoa Joe. I think there is some excitement behind this one. Not a fan of Samoa Joe on Raw challenging for the SmackDown title, but so is the wild card rule. I think Kofi retains, although this one gave me a little bit of pause. I could see Samoa Joe winning it. However, I just don't think it happens yet. This is the first time that they're locking up. I could see the feud being extended, but I don't think it is extended by Samoa Joe defeating Kofi, at least not for the title. Now, maybe is there a scenario where Samoa Joe wins by countout or DQ, I suppose, but I would say it's more likely Kofi wins by a DQ than anything. I am going with Kofi Kingston, and I certainly think he does not lose the title. And Justin Lowry agrees. He's also going with Kofi Kingston in this one to secure the victory and retain his title. So we think Kofi keeps it. I would guess Kofi probably holds the title until SummerSlam, and then we see where they go from there. It could be a completely different SmackDown altogether by the time we reach August, again with Eric Bischoff slated to supposedly take over starting next week, and then they're building up to Fox in October. I would assume that the SummerSlam SmackDown title match will be a big one, but I think Kofi Kingston will enter as the champion. Let's move on to the match we already highlighted, Undertaker Roman Reigns against Shane and Drew McIntyre. Seems pretty cut and dry. Again, you can't have the Undertaker lose. And typically Roman Reigns doesn't lose. Now, I know he did lose to Shane McMahon in Saudi Arabia, but Undertaker and Roman have to win this. I don't know why this match is even taking place, other than I think that they wanted to get a big name in The Undertaker to kind of promote this event, build some interest. Remember, ratings were really struggling a couple of weeks ago. So Roman and Undertaker, yeah, an unlikely duo, an alliance that doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense. They'll win. I hope that's the end of Shane McMahon and Roman Reigns. Probably it should be the end of Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns. Gives something new to Roman, have The Undertaker go away for a long, long time. And then I think Shane transitions to Kevin Owens after that. So I think this is the blow-off, and it leads to Taker and Roman winning. Justin Lowry agrees with that sentiment. Let's look at the U.S. title match between Ricochet and AJ Styles. This is one that people really, I think, want to see because it could be match of the night, could be match of the year candidate for WWE. Ricochet enters as the champion. AJ Styles, now fresh off his heel turn, has a lot of momentum. He's got the club with him. I'm sure they will be a factor in some degree in this match. Let's think about this, though. AJ Styles, would it be a step down for him to win the U.S. title? I would say yes. That being said, could it happen? Absolutely. And to that point, Justin Lowry picks that AJ Styles will win this match. I think Ricochet wins it. I'm not sure exactly how the match unfolds because I'm not sure that, Ricochet is going to decisively defeat AJ Styles. But we've seen this title change hands a lot. Samoa Joe, Rey Mysterio, Samoa Joe, Ricochet. I think that's 4 times in the span of 2 months. I don't think we need another title change. AJ Styles doesn't need this title. As a result, I think Ricochet keeps it. Will this feud continue? Probably. Maybe AJ wins it down the road, but for now, I'm going with Ricochet. Again, Justin going with AJ Styles. Let's look at the SmackDown Women's title match. It is now a 2-on-1 handicap match. Not a fan of the stipulation. I don't know if they've clearly explained what would happen if Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross defeat Bayley. I know that on SmackDown, Nikki said they would be co-champions. We have seen that before with Lay Cool. I don't know that they would bring that back. I would think it should be whoever pins Bayley becomes the champion, and maybe they will announce that stipulation, and all of a sudden there's some tension between Alexa and Nikki because Alexa wants to win the title. Nikki, maybe over anxious, tries to get a pin. It leads to them blowing up on each other. Bayley gets the victory. That's my pick. Justin agrees. He also thinks the hugger retains. It's going to be more about facilitating a storyline. It's going to be about having a great match, I think. So that's the biggest takeaway here. Looking at probably doing something like Bliss and Nikki at SummerSlam, so they will really start to plant the seeds here, starting at Extreme Rules. And the best way to do that, I think, is to have them lose to Bayley by having some tension in that matchup. Braun Strowman, Bobby Lashley. We'll kind of go quicker through these matches. We all know the build to this one's all about them exploding the Titantron, so on and so forth. It's a last man standing match. I don't really care. They've been doing arm wrestling, tug of war. They've been building this feud. I give them credit, but I don't think there's a lot of interest behind either one of these guys right now. There's been a lot of reports, however, that Paul Heyman is very big on Braun Strowman, wants to make him into a dominant monster. If that's the case, it'll be a heck of a lot easier to do that if he defeats Bobby Lashley. So I'm going Braun Strowman. Justin agrees. He's also going Braun Strowman. Does the match really matter? Probably not, but if they want to springboard Braun to bigger and better things, which I think people have been waiting years to see, then he probably wins this match. SmackDown Tag Team titles. It's a triple threat tag match. It is Bryan and Rowan, the champions, the previous number one contenders, Heavy Machinery, and then you throw in the New Day, which is Big E and Woods. Should be a fun match. Could be a really underrated match on this card. I anticipate that it's going to be a good one. So the way I look at it, it is going to be probably just a big spot fest, and I'm not saying necessarily high flying. I don't think you're going to see that, but there's going to be a ton of action because these three teams are talented, and in a triple threat like this, it's just constant motion, constant move sets, things happening, a lot of high impact. But I do think that I'm mixing Bryan and Rowan. Daniel Bryan and Rowan retain. They've been pretty good as the champs because Daniel Bryan's promos have been terrific. Really just talking down to the rest of the division while at the same time trying to build up the credibility of that tag team division. So I'm going Daniel Bryan and Rowan to retain. Pretty recent champs as well, and I don't think you need to quickly have them lose it to New Day, who we've already seen in this role, and I think maybe a bit premature for Heavy Machinery, although it could happen. I think that the champs retain, and Justin agrees. That's one of 2 tag team title matches. No, the women's tag team titles won't be defended. They are missing in action at this point. But the Raw men's tag team championships will be. The Revival, yes, they are the champs if you've forgotten. I know that they haven't done much of anything recently. They defend against the Usos. This sort of seemed like a feud that should have happened like 2 months ago. It's happening now. Sort of hard to pick because there's just not a lot of momentum to this matchup. I think that the Usos win the titles. And I just never get the feeling that Vince really sees the Revival out more than just good hands. He knows the Usos can get it done as champions, and the Usos have been booked pretty well for quite some time. I think they take the tag team titles away, and in part because I think this show will have a title change, and I don't really see anything else that's very clear. Yes, AJ Styles could win the title. I don't think that's happening. So I picked this to be the match where the title change takes place. Justin, however, thinks the Revival retain the titles. I hope that they do. I just don't think that they will. So we'll see how it plays out, but I anticipate new tag team champs on Raw. It still doesn't mean very much at this point. They need to do a lot of work to build up the credibility of those titles. And I could see that the Usos being the standard bearers for that, but I think making the Revival look strong is a better recipe for long-term tag team success, especially on the Raw side. Two more matches. Aleister Black makes his debut, at least with this new character, since he got moved over to SmackDown, broke up from Ricochet. He's been doing these vignettes backstage. Someone come knock on my door. We found out who knocked on the door, and it's Cesaro. So Cesaro's been a heel. Aleister Black's promos have been heel promos. So is Cesaro now a face? It seems like that's the case. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the crowd reacts to this, because Aleister Black was very popular in NXT. He was very popular in a tag team with Ricochet on the main roster, and then they sort of did a reset. But we don't know exactly how the crowd's going to react because he hasn't been in front of the live audience yet. So even though I think WWE's anticipating that he'll get booed, we have to wait and see. Cesaro has been getting kind of a lukewarm reaction where people like him, but he's sort of a heel. But now that he's not with Sheamus, it's not as much of heel heat. So the reaction to this one's going to be interesting. I think that Aleister Black has to win. Otherwise, he just loses all steam immediately. But there's also rumors that Cesaro's in line for a bit of a push. I think Black wins this one, but you make Cesaro look pretty good in the process. Justin agrees that Aleister Black also wins what accounts for basically his debut with this new storyline, this new character, if you will. Last match is the Cruiserweight title 205 Live competitors. Champion Drew Gulak, challenger Tony Nese. It was just a month ago that Gulak won the title from Tony Nese. He's not going to give it back already, I don't think. So I'm going with Drew Gulak. Justin agrees. And this is interesting because these guys actually were paired together when 205 Live first started. So for people who have been watching 2+ years of the show, pretty fun to have these two feud over the title. But Justin and I agree, Drew Gulak retains the title. So let's look at our predictions for Extreme Rules. There you go. It is, once again, Rollins and Lynch. We agree there. Kofi Kingston. We agree Undertaker and Reigns. The first match, Justin and I disagree, is the U.S. title. I think it's Ricochet. He goes with AJ Styles as the new champion. We agree Bayley retains the SmackDown title. Strowman wins the last man standing. Daniel Bryan and Rowan retain the tag team titles on SmackDown. And then Justin thinks the Revival retain on Raw. I think we see new champs in the Usos. And then Aleister Black and Drew Gulak are our picks as well. So basically, if you're looking at it, we differ on two matches. Justin thinks the new champion at Extreme Rules comes in the form of AJ Styles winning the U.S. title. I think it's the Usos winning the Raw tag team titles. So we'll see who's correct. There's a chance, of course, that if one match goes the way Justin predicts and the other match goes the way I predict, that we will tie. But we shall see. And to toot my own horn a little bit, again, last time I was 9 of 9, the first time that anyone, at least on this show with the predictions, has gotten 100% correct for pay-per-view. So a lot to live up to. I cannot believe that I would get 9 of 9 again. We shall see. But ultimately, I think Extreme Rules has a chance to be a decent show. It feels a little bit better in Stomping Grounds, which was just all rematches. There's some fresh matches here. Not the card maybe that I would book, but there's an opportunity for some good battles. Again, AJ and Ricochet, I think, has a chance to be spectacular. Samoa Joe and Kofi Kingston could be a really good one as well. And then tag team matches, those guys typically deliver, even if the story's not there. So I think there's a lot of good that could come from Sunday. That's not the only wrestling event of the weekend, however. I want to touch quickly on All Elite Wrestling's Fight for the Fallen. It takes place on Saturday, just a couple weeks after they had Fyter Fest. So, yeah, the name's a little confusing. Fyter Fest, Fight for the Fallen. Probably want to, space those out or change something in the future. Nonetheless, you see the big match there, the Young Bucks against Cody and Dustin Rhodes. This was built up after All Out. They kind of promoted this match at that point after Cody and Dustin had their epic battle that they would be teaming up to go against the Young Bucks. This is the big attraction. There's going to be a handful of other matches. This is really leading up to the start of television for All Elite and their big Chicago show upcoming down the road as well. So when you really look at what this show is going to be, probably somewhat along the lines of Fyter Fest. It's not going to be maybe a massive extravaganza like All In was for this show and All Out, but it might be. And Double or Nothing, of course, was their first real pay-per-view under the All Elite banner. That was, I think, a massive success. I think the Fyter Fest was kind of based on some fan reactions. I think this will sort of be along those same lines as Fyter Fest, maybe a little bit better. There's some bigger matches. Of course, as I mentioned, a tag team match has some real build to it. But this is just a point of establishing characters, building storylines for what's going to be a bigger payoff, hopefully, down the road. I probably will not be watching, but for those who are thinking about watching, WWE has tried to do something maybe to counter that. They've promoted Evolve's big show that takes place the same time, Saturday night, that will be streaming on the WWE Network, and a lot of people aren't happy that WWE is doing that. That's what they're going to do. They have so many different assets, they're going to use them to try to, minimize the competition. So, not unexpected. You can argue, is it, ethical or not for WWE to do that? Nonetheless, there's going to be competition all the time for All Elite, whether it comes from WWE or other promotions. So, to be expected, but Fight for the Fallen takes place this Saturday in Jacksonville. As you see, again, the headlining match there, Young Bucks versus Cody and Dustin. I know that they've also advertised Chris Jericho will be there in attendance. So we'll see how that show is. I think it has an opportunity, again, to really just build some anticipation so that All Out, the show in Chicago, and the debuting TV show get some more momentum. I think that should be the biggest goal here, not to maybe deliver an epic show with this, but to make sure that people know where future storylines will be going. Should be an exciting weekend. Both All Elite Wrestling and WWE holding pay-per-views, if you will, although they really no one's paying for these anymore. Pay-per-views is kind of an outdated term. Nonetheless, should be good this weekend, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of discussion about that next week. Certainly we'll review Extreme Rules with the results, and we'll revisit the predictions, and if Justin's back, I'm sure he will have a full analysis of Fight for the Fallen as well. That's going to do it for this week. I want you to once again check us out on Twitter. The handle is 5-Star Pod Wrestle. You could also look at our Instagram. Follow us on there. It's 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Subscribe, please, to our YouTube channel. You can do that below. And make sure you receive the notifications for whenever we have a new episode uploaded or whenever we do a live stream as well. You'll find out about that. So make sure you subscribe. Turn on the notifications. And again, feel free to go back, check out old videos, leave comments, tweet at us, send us something on Instagram. Just reach out to us, anything you'd like to see, anything positive or negative feedback that you can provide. We appreciate all of that. That's going to do it for another edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I'm your host, Sean Meyers. We'll catch you again next week right here on the podcast.